Hey guys, this is Benjamin, and I'm going to show you how to take a title like this to a title more like this. So I've imported my test footage. This is some ultra wide 32:9 test footage that I shot a while back, and we're going to keep existing settings because we're going to go and crop down to 1080p just so it's, normal. We're going to go to a bit of the sequence where we have the butterfly in frame. We're going to just move from here through the sequence and wait till we get to that cut here. We'll just crop down here. So we have this beautiful, beautiful butterfly, and we want to put some nice titles over it. And I'm gonna leave it this. What's a nice looking frame? I love this frame. The frame where he's looking down. There you go. So we'll use this as our frame, and this is your background. So how do we make this look cinematic? In fact, I'm going to shift so he's in the center of this frame. So this is just a good generic shot of butterfly doing his thing. So now we're going to go into graphics. If you are in Premiere Pro, here is the first way to do this. So now we're up here in the graphics panel, and this is the easiest way to create a tile. What we don't want to do is we don't want to we want to be very careful with how we put our title down. Now let's call this a lower third. Now, lower thirds are just generally going to be in the lower third of the screen. It's typically if you want someone's name and what they do, or in this case, what's this butterfly? Butterfly. Species unknown. Right? Because you usually have the scientific species. Now, the default here, we leave this here. It looks kind of like boring. It's maybe a bit like, what's wrong with this? What makes this nice? Your biggest friend is the font. Having a good font on deck is important to really setting your design apart from everyone else. So we're going to go in here and we're going to switch from Myriad Pro, which is the default, to one of my favorite fonts, which is Proxima Nova. There are fonts that are similar to this, in this case Montserrat. This one's very popular, but it's almost identical. We're going to use Montserrat in this particular example, but I do quite like... Actually, let's not use Montserrat. Let's use Proxima Nova. I actually prefer Proxima Nova. Proxima Nova has more weights, meaning it's more specific how thick you want it than something that's like that. So now you have a cleaner font, but it's still kind of not there. Now, one way that I typically like to do this is actually using caps. There are some default systems here that will allow you to convert all your text to whatever you need. In this case, all caps, small caps. I personally am going to go with all caps. And then for this subtitle, we want this subtitle to be smaller. You typically want your subtitles to be smaller just so that you have that hierarchy of information. If you have just kind of these titles in the same place, it looks a little bit amateur, and it doesn't really sell the title to make it beautiful. In this case, we're going to reduce the font size to be roughly the same. You do not have to make it square every time, but if you want that to be your vibe, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. In this case, I might even maybe change from a white to a very light gray to further separate it from the top. But be careful when you're doing titles, making sure that your background is not a similar color to your titles. If your background is very, very bright or very, very white, one great way of doing it is surrounding your text with a box, which we will go into in After Effects later on in the tutorial, or you can do something along the lines of just changing the color of the text, which you should be very careful with, because if you use black text, that's another kind of no-no, but you can also do it if you do it right. Just be careful with the color of your text. It might look unprofessional. So here we have our new and improved thing, and it looks quite nice. It's not that bad, it's not that small, it's not that big. One thing I would change, though, I'd probably shift this guy down a little bit to where it's closer to the bottom so that you see how we have the same distance. If I zoom in here, we can see that this title has the same distance between it and the left side and it and the bottom of this text to the bottom side of the frame. That is called what we call in graphic design is called kingstoning. Essentially, in graphic design, you literally have a box and it's called your kingstone. And the kingstone is designed so that you can figure out what your spacing is. Oh, it's exactly 10 pixels apart from these other things, and they would typically all be the same. Also, another fun thing a lot of people like doing with double T's is that we're going to you can reduce the tracking. The tracking is the distance between individual letters. We call that also kerning, one of those two, but in the film we call it tracking, but you can connect the two T's and it's really funny. But I might not do that in this particular case. Actually, you would only really select the first T because it does the after that thing. So you do like, oh, look, it's like a double T. Look at how artsy that is, right? I would not personally do that because if we zoom back out to fit, it looks kind of nice. But in this particular case, I like to keep it at 0. In fact, I might even like space them just a little bit more because then the distance between the two T's and the T and the E are the same. Very nitpicky. You usually wouldn't have to do that. I would not have even done that in this particular case because it's so simple. But now you have this butterfly and this beautiful shot of this beautiful butterfly on the ground. And then we have this title come on and there you go. Butterfly, species unknown. But it's still missing something. Like, it's missing breath. It's missing movement. What gives you that motion graphics? This is where After Effects comes in. So now we're going to go ahead and switch to After Effects. I'll see you there. And we are now here in After Effects, the lovely program for motion graphics and all other types of computer-generated imagery on a two-dimensional plane. Three-dimensional stuff is a little bit different, and that requires something like Cinema 4D or Blender or something similar. So now we are in After Effects. I'm going to forewarn you, if you don't have any experience with After Effects, it is a very scary program. So it's okay. I'm going to go slow. Feel free to pause the video if you need any help. So we're going to go over into this window on the right here. This is called the Effects and Presets panel. And this is where you're going to find all of your wonderful tidbits of effects here. The bottom here is where you'll find your demonstration, or the bottom here is where you're going to find your, essentially your sequence, your scrubbing around. It's the same thing as in Premiere Pro, the timeline. So it's the same thing, just a little bit different looking. Then you're going to see on the right hand, this is effect controls. So if I were to drag an effect from here into here, it's going to pop up in there. And on the top, we have some tools. In the middle, you have your view area. So we're going to right click in the blank area of the timeline. We're going to hit new text. We're going to click on that, and now we have created an empty text layer. So now we're going to do a new thing, butterfly. And you can see I've already got Proxima Nova as my selected font. And I'm now going to mess with this to get this back where it is. If you need to skip ahead, I've got the time code down if you want to skip ahead to a more advanced side to design things. I'm going to just kind of make this thing the way that it was in Premiere. So in this case, we want to make this thing pretty small again. In this case, I have tracking set to this, set it back to auto, and we're going to set our, we're aligned on the right. Usually you'll be aligned to the center or the left, but to change that, we go to paragraph, and we hit this left align text button. So we do align our text to the left. Go back to character, and now I'm going to set it to about 72 is correct, whatever you want, about that big. Maybe actually let's make it 65. 65. So at 65, we now have a good lower third, and then we're going to go to the subtext, make it about yay big. Actually, let's make it a 36, and then make butterfly a little bit larger. Let's make butterfly like 80. That's a little bit better. We want to make sure we have enough size where it's readable on screen, specifically the size of screen that you might be dealing with, and how big that is in your field of view. That is why there's such big text in thumbnails on YouTube, because it's a very small viewing area. So I'll get back into that in a little bit. So now we are going to move this. Going up to the top, you see these toolbars. You're going to select the arrow, which is the selection tool. And we're going to click, and we're going to drag this to the bottom left of the screen where we now have it. Let's just see where we were. I'm going to make a little more space there. There you go. So it's a little bit different, but it's similar. I'm going to go ahead. I misspelled unknown. I can spell unknown. There we go. And we're going to change that white to an... Oh, it was already an off-white. I kind of actually like that. It's kind of neat. So let's make that a little bit of a gray. In fact, let's even make it a little bit of a bluish gray. I'm going to be a little creative here. Just a little blue. And the reason that I'm using blue in this particular case is because it offsets from the color of the shot. And I'm actually going to make this a pure white. There we go. Although I got to be careful with this, because as you can see, just making sure that this isn't clashing too much with the color. I'm actually going to make it a little bit brighter. because I want it to be a little bit more offset, but at the same time, that's a little bit more offset. I can read that pretty effectively. So now we want to, you know, make it interesting, make it pop, make it do stuff. So you can, and I'm going to be very general here. This is a basic tutorial, basic animation. So one of the things we can do, and you can do this in Premiere Pro, but I decided to come into After Effects. A quick tidbit. A quick tidbit on how to do this in Premiere Pro. This is going to be a speed run round. So you go into the demo linked comp, and if you know how to do this, you go up here into Effect Controls, and you can keyframe through here. Opacity, 0, 100, and then oh wait, that was actually the video. No. Anyways, you can fade in using this and fade out using this. There would be a title there, but there you go. So we're going to be back in here, and we now have this beautiful little thing here. And I'm going to go ahead and fade this in over 2 seconds, which is very simple. You go to Transform, Opacity, click on the watch, which is going to make, say, this is now a thing that you keyframe at 100%. We're going to drag the playhead back to the beginning, and we're going to set this to 0%. Another quick tidbit, if you want to add a keyframe, say I want this to go back from 100 to 0% at 24 seconds, I can actually go over here, and I can click on this little circle, this little thing here. Hit add or remove keyframe at current time. This means, oh, it's going to stay this way until we get here. Meaning, if you were to say put this at 0% all the way at the end, it would fade in for 2 seconds and then slowly fade out for the rest because it's linear, right? So we want to tell the program to stay at 100% for this long. That is why the little diamond is so useful. So now we're going to go ahead and do something a little bit more advanced. We're going to begin the process of animation. Now this is something right now what we have is something like this. Right? It's pretty decent. You can have it fade in a lot more quickly than that. I'd recommend maybe 1 second for something like this. So if we drag this to roughly 1 second, fade in time, click on the diamond, drag it in, and then it, in fact, I might even like let it sit for a bit without a title, and then fade in. There you go. Very smooth, very simple. This is about where I would sit with this, and I wouldn't necessarily even go into After Effects to do this. You can do that within Premiere. But this is where After Effects really takes to the next level. This allows you to do actual animation of your titles. And this is really what makes titling so awesome and so interesting in After Effects. So what I want to do is I want this to fly in from the left, like, and then I want this to go from the left, coming in an animated style. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. So we're going to start with something called, so I'm going to actually copy this, Control-Shift-Paste. Oh, sorry, Control-Paste. So now we've duplicated this. I'm going to make this invisible. Oh, sorry. I'm actually going to delete butterfly. And then I'm going to delete species unknown here. So now I've essentially made these two different things, right? Little trick if you want to do that, and you ever like have two pieces of text and they're on different lines and you need to separate them, just do that. You delete the text and it'll keep it all spaced out properly and you don't have to worry about that. So one of the things we want to do is we want the butterfly to fly in from the left, but I don't want it to fly in from the left all the way. I want it to kind of come out of nothing. This is a very common way of doing title intros. So we're going to start at about 2 seconds and we're going to create a mask. So a mask is essentially in After Effects something that hides part of your image. So a really great way of showing it, I'm going to do this in the background. I want a square mask, and I want a square mask around this guy. So we're going to push this mask around, and as we drag, you can see it's only showing the parts inside of the mask. In fact, I can do something really advanced, like if I wanted to trace the shape of the butterfly around the butterfly, right, using this tool, which you can see as the pen tool, it will trace around the butterfly. In fact, you can do a much finer job at doing that. If, say, you have a solid thing in the image and you want to cut something out of a video, this is what you would do. But in this case, we're going to use masks, which are, by the way, some of the most powerful tools in this program, to do something quite simple, which is just to create a little invisible area starting right here. So whenever I push the text this way, then it disappears behind that mask. So we're going to go ahead and use this And we're going to just mask right around this guy like so. And then we have this set up properly. Now we want this butterfly to come onto screen and end here. So now we're going to go to text, animate, position. So the text position, this affects the text position without affecting where the actual layer is. So the layer is this whole thing that says butterfly. That's the text layer. If I were to move the text layer, it moves the mask with the text. But we just want the text to move. We don't want that mask moving. So we're going to start up here with moving the position of the text. And so we're going to start the position of the text just to where that Y is barely outside of the frame. About here. And we hit the top stopwatch button. And now we're going to go about a second ahead. Maybe not even. We'll zoom in here. A second ahead. And we're going to set it back to 0. So now, as you can see, it kind of pops into place. Although I want it to be a little bit faster. And you'll see why I want this in a minute. So it looks kind of really janky, quite frankly. It looks kind of stupid and kind of dumb. And man, I feel like I've been scammed now. And yes, you have, my friend. But we are going to do the magic of motion graphics. And this is called Easy Ease. So you're going to right click on this little diamond and you're going to hit the keyframe assistant and you're going to hit Easy Ease in. Easy Ease is essentially something that if we look here, you click this little button here. That is the graph editor. Now, if we zoom in, you see this red line. You're telling the computer to go from this position to this position. And the first thing the computer is going to do is something called a linear graph. So what that means is it says, I'm going to move from here to here at exactly this one speed, and it's going to immediately stop. But you want it to flow and be really cool. So Easy Ease changes that. And whenever I hit Easy Ease, I'm going to just do Easy Ease. Easy Ease in only does it on one side, and Easy Ease out is on the other side. And you'll see in a sec what that means. In this case, oh wait, now there's a little curve here. So now when I play it, it's a little bit more smooth. You should notice how whenever I scrub these few frames, it slows down. It's actually not the best thing in the world, but as you can see, it does a fantastic job of making it a little bit more smooth. So now what we want to do is we actually want to change how that behavior works. We didn't Easy Ease out necessarily or in this end, we don't need that. If we wanted to do Easy Ease on both ends, and we activate that, it will Easy Ease on both ends. And as you can see here, it has a little bit of a curve here. So now I'm going to show you kind of a secret on how to get this to look a lot better. What we want to do is we're going to click on this little thing down here, and we're going to switch from the value graph to the speed graph. And we're going to click on that. And now we've got this hump. This shows how fast the text is moving per second, 100 pixels per second, 200 pixels per second. And you can see these little grabby things. Now, if I grab these, I can change how the influence of this Bezier curve. So what we really want to do is we're going to grab this thing on the right, and we're going to pull it this way, pretty much as far as it can go. And then the magic happens. We really want to see it slow down right on the end because we want it to have that pop. So we're going to move it this way a little bit more. So we're going to keep trying to edit this graph, see how far we can pull it. In fact, we're going to turn off and make this back linear. We set that to 0. So now you can see it's a little bit more smooth. So if we hit fit and we go back to the beginning, we watch this thing play through. Okay, now it's a lot more smooth, but we still do want to make it a little bit more interesting because it looks kind of oddly out of place. One of the things you can do to smooth up that motion here that we're seeing that is not quite there yet, it's kind of got a bit of a problem. Why is it off? Is to add motion blur. Motion blur, simply put, is the blur from motion. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. And if you see here, you'll see this little motion blur icon. It's these little moving circles. And we're going to click on this and this. Ah, now there's a blur effect. And this is shocking because it really changes the feel and the motion of something. So we're going to go ahead and pre-render that. And now it looks much more fluid because it looks like there's something moving there, right? Now this is something that you can do in this manner, or in fact, this is another secret. You can set, I don't know, you can completely delete this whole thing. We can go 0 to 0, turn this off, and if we really wanted to go fast, the way I would personally do this is you can do the same thing but down. Say you wanted to come up from down. This is another very common one. So let's set it at 2 seconds. Let's do at -59, just like so. And then in about a second or so, we set it back to 0. And now we right-click this, hit Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease in, go into the graph editor, turn the bias as low as we can on this one, turn the bias as high as we can on this one, and voila! A beautiful vertical one. Super fast once you know how to do it. And I'm actually going to leave it on the vertical because I prefer that look. So we're going to go back here because it's slower and you can kind of see the motion without having to deal with anything else. So now you have this bottom to top, boom. So now I want to essentially do the same thing with species unknown, and we're going to essentially do the same thing very quickly. So I'm going to do that. And now I've just gotten these second ones done, and we now have this beautiful title and subtitle. So now you have this beautiful title, and you want to, say, put it all over your videos. You want to have this be your standard title card. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and I have another tutorial for that. If you look in the card above, how to make Mogurt files. I actually made that video for a friend of mine. I just uploaded it to my channel, so there is that tutorial. I may or may not re-record it so I can have it specifically for the channel, but that is for a later date. So now, there you have it. If we go back to Premiere Pro, because we already pre-composed this, and we pre-render this guy out, and you now have this beautiful sequence, butterfly, species unknown. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you want to see more content like this, hit that like button and comment down below. What do you think I did well? What do you think I could improve on? And what do you want to see from me? What are you curious about the wonderful world of filmmaking? My name is Benjamin Yunus, and I'll catch you in the next one.